Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast, coming to you from my live home office here. And I was reading some more mail that came through, and people are asking, like, hey, why am I follow-ups being ignored? I'm sending follow-ups. What should I do with those follow-ups instead that will make them a little more valuable and people will open them and read them? Well, there's several reasons for that, but I'm going to say the first one is, for most of you, you're not sending follow-ups, right? It's crazy how many people do not follow up. Statistically, let's say a lead comes in. Do you know that over half the leads are never followed up with? That's crazy, right? I think so. Do you also know that statistically many similar percentages are on, hey, you had a meeting, but people don't send the follow-up, or they don't send it in a timely manner? I want you to think about something here. If you go out on, let's say, the perfect date, how long do you take to get back to that person? Let's say this is a date between a man and a woman. How long does the woman expect you to get back to her after an amazing date before you as the man are considered burnt toast, right? Let's see what that is. Well, I've done this research and I've done this live, and I've literally polled women in the audience and said, how long does this person have to get back to you? Almost overwhelmingly, 90% of the room will say he has within 24 hours. Sooner the better. Now, if he waits more than 3 days, it's pretty much over. He waits a week, they don't even want to hear from you. So as the man, right? So I want you to take this analogy and I want you to apply it to a business scenario. You go to a meeting, you had a great phone call, you went out to lunch with someone, right? When are you following up? You go to a networking event. I've measured these statistics. Do you know that less than 13% of people on average follow up with each other after they said to one another at a networking event, let's follow up with each other? Think about that. 87% just dying on the vine. So the number one reason your sales follow-ups are being ignored is because people aren't doing them, right? That's the number one reason. But let's say you are doing them and you're sending a follow-up. Why are they being ignored? Well, in most cases, because this is a super frustrating thing, you send it and there's no reply, right? Usually your follow-up is really generic. It's kind of like, hey, just checking in, right? Now, that's okay if you're really good friends and you've been friends for a long time. But when you first meet someone, if it's just generic, like just checking in type of thing, it really adds no information that the prospect that you're trying to sell to, in this case, or trying to build a relationship, they don't need that, right? They have no compelling reason for them to respond. So it will feel like busy work to them more so than a helpful interaction from you, the person who's trying to build a relationship. Now, if they value that same relationship, in that case, they'll probably respond. But in most cases, if they're not going to respond. So what do you want to do instead? What you want to do is share something that's relevant, like an article, an industry trend, or something like that, that gets their attention. Maybe provide a case study, offering some actionable tips, right? How about asking an insightful question right out of the gate, right? That encourages, say, deeper thought about their current situation. In other words, introduce something that has something that's going to provide them a reason to engage with you and to acknowledge your existence, if you will. I want you to think people are super busy, right? Now, you don't have to be like shock value to get this done, but something that's respectful, that captures their attention. Right? Now, think about it. If you're driving down the highway, the freeway, or whatever, and you see a person just walking along the side of the freeway, it will catch your attention. And what I want you to do is think about how you can get your attention captured without doing some crazy or insane thing like walking down the highway in the middle of the night in dark clothing, right? And then all of a sudden somebody just sees you and it's like, wow, what was that person? Now, you still will get attention, but the reality is you want to get attention that gets a positive response, not a negative response. All right, so that's the number two. Let's go to number three. your messages are not personalized or relevant to the person you're trying to reach out to. Let's say they're a prospect. So if, again, things are generic and they're not relevant or they're not personalized to that person, then, there's really no specific, like, wow, I got to get back to them. If they're thinking this, think about this. If they're thinking, so what? The message you just sent them or left them on their voicemail or whatever, they're thinking, yeah, not that big of a deal versus, wow, I got to hear more about this. That is one reason that they're not responding to your particular message that you're following up with. So what can you do instead? Give them something specific, some details about the last conversation, mentioning, let's say, something unique about them or something that you can mention that's unique that might have been in the recent news. Or for example, I found a article that was published about people who were born in November, for example, and the person I was talking with prior to, they were born in November. All of the really cool things that happened on their birthday, like that November 17th, all of these specific things, like that captures something that is personalized to them. And believe it or not, they responded to me very quickly. So, you can, highlighting your solution, things like that. Those are good. If you can find the pain point in there, tailor in the content to, show them something that you've done your homework about them, something that truly is interesting to them. And you can find this all in their social profiles, by the way. I found people, like, I was in the military and I found a gentleman who was in the Marine Corps. And I sent out and I said, hey, I see you were in the Marine Corps, Semper Fi, right? That's their message, right? And then I said, even though I wasn't in the Marine Corps, I spent 12 years in the Army. I thank you for your service, right? That was enough to get them to say, hey, this guy's done their research. Okay. The last one that I'll share with you is you're probably not using a multi-channel approach or you're not being persistent enough. In other words, you're giving up too soon. You're thinking, oh, I just sent a follow-up. That means, oh, hey, they should get back to me. Well, if you're busy and they're busy, they may simply forget. They might be overwhelmed. It's your job, if you want to build the relationship, to continue the persistence, right? Now, studies show clearly if it's a cold lead, right, this could take multiple touches, right, before somebody's even ready to discuss. Just because you met somebody and you had a brief conversation, they get super busy. By the time they talk to you and the time they're now in their busy life, the interest may have kind of tailed off, if you will. And so now you've got to kind of re-engage to get that going. It's not a cold email or a cold voicemail or a cold text, but it's still not like, super warm. So you've got to kind of warm it back up again. And sometimes it takes multiple touches to do that, but people give up way too soon. If it's a cold email, man, it might take between 5 and 21 touch points before they, really are responding in a way that you want them to. Sometimes I've had, especially with high-end CEOs or high-end business owners, sometimes it's taken literally, 6, 7 months actually to get the appointment because we're just going back and forth, exchanging things, and I'm staying persistent. And when you stay persistent, it goes from, I don't really know you to, kind of like you, to, geez, I'm getting to know you better, starting to trust you, to, hey, wow, great information I'm getting. This has been helpful. I'm starting to trust, and so on, to, let's have a conversation. And now they're receptive to having that conversation you wanted to do in the first place. So instead of giving up too soon, be persistent, but strategic, right? Incorporate multiple touches over a period of time without being annoying. That's the key. You've got to be sending them stuff that goes, wow, I didn't know that. Or, something that offers value, like, geez, I'd like to know more about that. Again, if they're saying, so what? Not a big deal to them, you're not going to get their attention. Here's a big important point. You want to leverage multiple channels. Multiple channels just are, not just email and text because it's convenient. Send them a LinkedIn message, a video message, even direct mail, right? Pick up the phone and call them. differentiate yourself amongst the other people that are using just like single channel follow-up. Use multimodality follow-up. And one last thing, most times, most people, and I would say this is number 5, you don't leave a call to action. You like send this message like, hey, I'm interested in this XYZ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, it's left, even if you did something like, what are your thoughts on this insight that I just provided to, right? Would you like to get together and discuss? And you want to vary your call to actions because you never know when you're going to hit the right one, in particular, if you don't know the person, okay? So you got the 5 reasons that people primarily might be not trying to ignore you, but they're not responding back to you in the time that you want with your follow-up. And if you're asking, hey, Doug, how do you know so much about this? Well, we built a personalized, meaningful, relevant follow-up process, right? We built a SaaS product service to use for doing this in an automated way. In other words, even if you don't remember, the system will remember and it'll prompt you to send it, or it'll send it automatically. If you want to know more about the system, you want to know more about how to predictively grow your revenue, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Sales and strategies is both a plural. So reach out at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. You can give a call directly to my cell phone at area code 832-549-4836. I am in East Coast time here in New Hampshire. And if you want to check out more about me, just type in Doug C. Brown Revenue Growth. I'll come up everywhere, or go to my LinkedIn at Doug Brown 123. All right. As I close out every single podcast episode, I say this to you. Today, go out and sell something. Go out and sell a lot of it. Play win, win, win. You win, they win, someone else wins. Don't discount. You don't have to discount if you're providing value-laden material, oh, by the way, on value, what they deem as value, right? If you're providing that information, your trust, your credibility, everything just goes up, and price isn't as big of a deal. Think of it this way. Why do people buy first-class tickets to fly 3 or 4 hours? It's not always logical, right? But people justify this emotionally from the value perception that they are in first class. So you want to keep that same concept and provide value through all of your conversations so that you are first class and people want to buy you. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.